As two brothers, Luz and Angelo hide in the closet, waiting for their father to come home so they can surprise him. But just as their little game of hide and seek begins, a man named Vincent Vanetti barbarically knocks at their front door.
Testa, open the door, it's us.
And asks for the father's name. Vincent enters Testa's house with two other men behind him and tells him that the Don has been taken out. Testa, expecting trouble, goes up to a drawer, secretly picks up a pocket knife, and hides it in his hands. When Testa asks Vincent if the men from the Orco family were behind this, he reveals that it was Vincent himself who killed the Don and points his gun at Testa, demanding the ledger. Luz sees everything unravel and starts crying, but Angelo keeps him quiet and reassures him that the bad guys will leave soon. Testa tells Vincent that he can investigate himself to find out how much went to the galoshes, but Vincent gets infuriated and demands the ledger from Testa on the spot, to which he says that it's at the bank. Elena gets on her knees and begs Vincent not to do anything rash, but Vincent knocks her onto the ground with his gun. Seeing this, Luz runs to his mother, getting worried about her. Testa, in a last-ditch effort, takes out his pocket knife, stabs Vincent in his hand, and quickly slices up his face, leaving a shallow cut. Vincent's men then shoot Testa multiple times, killing him. Elena begs Vincent to spare Luz, but Vincent tells her that her child will never forget about him and will come to him for revenge in the future before pulling the trigger and killing them both. Angelo, who is still in the closet, is traumatized by the gruesome events taking place right before his eyes. Vincent and his men search the house to see if anyone is still alive. He orders Nero to look inside the closet, but he finds nothing inside. Turns out Angelo somehow was able to change his position and is now hiding under the sofa in the same room. He waits for Nero to leave and quickly makes a run for it. Nero hears the enemy spotted sound effect and goes after Angelo, who runs into the forest. Nero aims the gun at Angelo and pulls the trigger, but misses his shot, literally. Angelo then runs into his best friend's house, whose name is Cordio, and he tells him about everything that happened. Cordio makes him some hot chocolate and reassures him that Vincent and his men won't chase him all the way to his house. Cordio allows Angelo to stay the night at his place, strengthening their bond of brotherhood. Angelo sleeps over but gets up very early in the morning, and while Cordio is still sleeping, he goes back to check things over at his own house, where he ran from. When he arrives, he finds many townsfolk standing around and his house burnt to ashes by Vincent. Feeling defeated, Angelo walks away. 7 years later, as the sky is covered with dark clouds and rain is pouring down heavily when a man named Bruno is walking up to his apartment. A few old women are chatting with each other, but one of them notices Bruno and hands him over a letter addressed to Angelo Lagusa, but with the recipient's address being his own apartment. Bruno takes the letter from the old woman without saying a word and heads inside his apartment. As he gets into his ideal male living space, which consists of a single chair and a bed, he opens the letter and finds a black and white photograph of a little boy and says the name Vanetti in a sinister tone. Elsewhere, in the lawless city named Illinois, Angelo disembarks from his train. At Cordio's apartment, his friend Serrato tries some of his homemade moonshine and gets hooked to it. Serrato proposes that Cordio should sell his moonshine to the Orco family, but Cordio refuses, stating his hatred for the Mafia. Serrato tells Cordio how his older brother, Body, is working for Fango, who just joined the Orco family. Cordio doesn't care and just tells him to leave. But when he opens the door, he finds Body staring at him like Freddy Fazbear. Body asks Serrato if he managed to secure the sale, but Serrato tells him how Cordio is unwilling to sell his moonshine to the Mafia before getting headbutted and knocked down by Body. With a baseball bat in his hands, Body asks Cordio if he's going to sell his moonshine to the Orco family. But Cordio still refuses, resulting in him getting kneed in his gut. Body, seeing how Cordio is not willing to cooperate at all, starts destroying all the equipment in his apartment so he can't make any more moonshine in the future. But just as Body is on his rampage, Angelo shows up out of the blue and strikes Body down with a wrench. The two brothers leave, and Angelo sits down with Cordio for a chat. Cordio mentions how making moonshine was never something he wanted to do, and that he's only doing it to save up money for school. He then asks Angelo where he has been for the past 7 years, to which Angelo replies that he goes by the name Avilio Bruno, now explaining the letter he received from the old lady, which was addressed to Angelo Lagusa. Cordio asks Angelo if it's okay for him to be back in town, but he remains silent and asks Cordio about his mother. He replies that she unfortunately passed away last summer. Knowing this, Angelo tells him that now there is no one holding him down. so he asks Cordio if he'd like to make some money with him. He explains to Cordio how he'd also like to sell his moonshine to the family, but he refuses. After a little bit of persuasion, by emotionally blackmailing him that they are brothers, Angelo successfully convinces Cordio to sell his moonshine to the Mafia. Angelo and Cordio drive around in a car and spot a church that has been converted into a speakeasy for selling moonshine on a sandbar called The Island. Cordio suggests that they could likely get a good price for their drinks there because of the upscale clientele frequenting the establishment. Inside the church, a suited man persuades Grancio, the speakeasy owner, to taste some alcohol he claims is imported. Meanwhile, another man with brown hair at the bar listens in on their conversation but appears indifferent to it. In the meantime, Angelo and Cordio enter the speakeasy and present Cordio's moonshine to Grancio. Outside, a man with blonde hair approaches another man sitting in his car, informing him that someone has stolen some of their alcohol and that he's searching for it. The man in the car denies any knowledge of the theft and asks if the blonde-haired man is affiliated with the Orco family. He tells him yes and introduces himself as Fango. A muscular man stands behind Fango as he questions the man in the car from where he got the booze. The man in the car points backwards, indicating where he obtained it. Fango calls the man honest and steps aside, allowing the muscular man behind him to strike the man in the car with brass knuckles. Meanwhile, Angelo approaches Grancio with the intention of selling his moonshine, but Grancio dismisses him without even trying it. Despite Grancio's growing irritation, Angelo pours him another glass. However, before Grancio can react, the man with the brown hair intervenes and takes a sip of their moonshine, confirming that it is indeed bussin'. But before they can discuss the details, trouble stirs up inside the church. As chaos ensues, one of the men near the front entrance collapses, writhing in pain, while another man armed with a Tommy gun positions himself by a window at the door's base, aiming to shoot Fango in the legs. However, one of Fango's men approaches from behind, coercing the man with the gun to open the door. He seizes the Tommy gun and addresses everyone in the church, saying he just joined the Orco family, and starts asking if anyone has seen a young man named Nero Vanetti, as he has some business to attend to with him. Angelo is surprised by the name Nero since he was one of the men with Vincent Vanetti all those years ago. The brown-haired man mentions how Nero Vanetti is Don Vanetti's son. Grancio tells Fango to not cause any trouble in the island since those are the rules there. But he counters by saying he came here to make sure those rules are followed, stating how he found some booze stolen from him in the church's parking lot. No one says anything about Nero, so Fango points at Cordio, accusing him of being Nero, but Cordio declines. Fango yells, asking if there are any other Neros in the room, while Angelo picks up a pocket knife from the hay in one of the crates. As Fango points the gun at Cordio to shoot him, Angelo goes up to him, claiming that he's Nero Vanetti. Angelo approaches Fango with his hands raised in surrender, but in a swift move, he evades the gun and presses a knife against Fango's throat. However, instead of complying, Fango orders Serpent, his subordinate, to slit Cordio's throat, confident that Angelo won't kill him. As Serpent moves to carry out the order, the brown-haired man hurls a bottle of alcohol at him. Fango breaks free from Angelo's hold and reaches for the discarded gun. Amidst the chaos, everyone seeks cover behind the bar counter to shield themselves from Fango's gunfire. Cordio tells everyone to keep throwing bottles of alcohol at Fango, as he brews a flammable mixture of paraffin in a bottle and tells everyone to make a run for the exit as he throws the bottle. Fango shoots the bottle, which causes the mixture inside it to fall on him and start a fire, allowing the four of them to exit the church. The brown-haired man approaches the car and finds Tiger badly beaten. As he opens the car door, he's suddenly attacked with a knife by the same man who previously beat Tiger. Fortunately, the brown-haired man dodges the attack, and the man in the white suit takes care of the rest. Inside the car, the man in the white suit removes his fake mustache, revealing his disguise. The brown-haired man assures Angelo and Cordio that their moonshine is top-notch and will bring in good profits. When Angelo asks if Nero was really present at the church, the brown-haired man removes the mask from his face, revealing himself to be Nero Vanetti. In the dead of night, while driving a car loaded with alcohol, Vanno alerts Tronco to the imminent police patrols. Tronco suggests bribing the cops, but Vanno warns that Scusa, the new head of the Federal Bureau of Prohibition, won't be satisfied with a small bribe, especially since he's already received funds from the Orco family. Spotting a patrol car, Vanno urges Tronco to act quickly. Tronco stops the car in the middle of the forest, and they use bushes and branches to cover the vehicle's rear end before retreating into the woods. Vanno keeps his gun ready as a precaution, but the patrol car passes by without detecting them. He calls out to Tronco that they should leave as soon as possible, but Vanno is startled by the sound of snapping wood as he steps on it. Suddenly, Serpent emerges from the darkness, holding a bloodied knife, who immediately attacks him. Vanno somehow fends off the Serpent attack using a wood stick, and he runs off hiding under the car. Another car arrives with its headlights illuminating Tronco's lifeless body. Several men exit the car and surround Tronco's vehicle. One of them enters Tronco's car and drives away with it. Having no choice, he grabs on to the underside of the car, and Vanno's whereabouts disappear along with the car into the night. The next day, on the joyous occasion of Fio Vanetti's wedding to Ronaldo Galascias, nephew of Don Galascias, festivities are in full swing at the Vanetti mansion. Amidst the celebration, Vanno shares with Nero how he cleverly escaped the scene by clinging to the underside of a car. Angelo, using the fake name Avilio Bruno, and Cordio make an appearance at the wedding party as invited guests. Angelo presents Nero with 5 bottles of their moonshine as a wedding gift, which Nero graciously accepts. Meanwhile, Barbero, a trusted member of the Vanetti family, arrives and informs Nero that his father, Vincent Vanetti, requests his presence in his office. Nero introduces Barbero to Angelo and Cordio before excusing himself to meet with his father. Vincent asks Nero about the Vanetti playhouse, which should be finished by the end of June according to Nero. Frate, Nero's younger brother, mentions how the playhouse will cause the Orco, Vanetti, and Galascias families to all be in the same place, a place for all the big shots to gather. Vincent mentions how he doesn't have long to live, but he still plans to leave his family with strong footing before kicking the bucket. That's why their sister is marrying Don Glacia's nephew. Nero angrily tells him that they killed one of their own last night, mentioning Tronco, and he isn't happy about the lack of action from his father's end regarding the issue with other Mafia families overstepping their bounds, since the route to smuggle moonshine was theirs until 3 months ago. Nero, showing how religious he is, tells his father that God only helps those who help themselves before placing a jar of Cordio's moonshine on his desk and leaving the room. Vanno openly displays his hate for Ronaldo by speaking ill of him and staring at him intensely. Ronaldo, noticing Vanno's animosity, approaches their table and attempts to provoke him by insulting the Vanetti family. However, Barbero intervenes, recognizing the potential consequences, and prevents Vanno from escalating the situation. Angelo joins the group and describes Ronaldo as an ass in a lion's skin, which has to be the sickest roast of 1928. Ronaldo tries to strike Angelo, but Angelo effortlessly evades the punch before Vanno and Barbero restrain Ronaldo. But the sister comes towards them, diffusing the situation and saying to Vanno, "When will he grow up?" In an attempt to diffuse the tension, Angelo offers Barbero some of Cordio's moonshine, which impresses him. Barbero expresses his admiration for the drink and requests to speak with Cordio privately, while Vanno is really impressed with Bruno with the way he roasts Ronaldo, and he introduces himself. Bruno shakes his hand and introduces himself as well, and tells him with a sinister look that he is sure they will make a good team. Nero cooks up a meal for Vanno, Tiger, Barbero, and himself. Nero and Barbero sing praises of Cordio's moonshine, but Vanno changes the topic by asking Nero if they'll be taking out Fango for killing Tronco. Nero immediately declines, saying how the Galascia family wants the Vanettis and Orcos to get along. Vanno gets enraged and asks Nero how else he's supposed to avenge Tronco before saying that he'll kill Fango himself. Nero immediately changes his answer and tells Vanno that they'll be killing Fango by having someone else pull the trigger. After some time, Vanno takes Angelo and Cordio into a private room where he asks Angelo to kill Fango for him, and on doing so, they will let him join the family. Angelo immediately agrees to his request and receives a pistol and some ammo along with the location of the target from Vanno. He mentions that Fango will be with her mistress, Lacrima, in her apartment and gives Angelo the permission to kill her as well before leaving the room. As Vanno leaves the room, Cordio asks why he's teaming up with the Vanettis. Angelo takes out the letter he received and shows it to Cordio, mentioning how someone claiming to be his father's friend wants to help him with his revenge mission by revealing all information about the ones who killed his family. Later, Serrato and Vanno wait inside a car outside Lacrima's apartment. Angelo is also in the car and sprays some alcohol on himself to make it seem like he's a drunk alcoholic despite being completely sober. Serpent sits in his car, watching out for any potential threats to Fango. He spots a drunk man and goes up to him, telling him to get lost while also beating him. As planned, Serrato comes up behind Serpent on his bare back by Lacrima, almost jizzing his brains out. Angelo enters the room and takes aim to shoot Fango with a silencer on the gun, but he notices Angelo in the mirror's reflection and avoids getting shot. Fango pulls out a knife from his pants, Fango then places the knife against Lacrima's neck, threatening to kill her. He then inserts the gun's barrel inside Lacrima's armpits in a sexual manner and dares Angelo to shoot. Fango misses shooting Angelo but injures Lacrima's armpit, making her scream in pain. While chilling in Serrato's car, Serpent hears the gunshots and runs to Fango. Angelo and Fango shoot at each other with the worst aim in history. But Fango, seeing an opening, escapes through the window and jumps onto the roof of a building next to theirs. As Fango makes his escape, Serpent reaches the room and points his gun at Angelo. But Vanno comes up from behind and knocks Serpent out. Vanno notices his knife with the snake handle in Serpent's hand, making him realize that it was Serpent who killed Tronco and not Fango. The cops arrive at the scene, and Vanno and Angelo agree to meet at the graveyard in the old village where Tronco is buried while they escape. As Vanno leads Serpent to Tronco's grave, he allows him a moment to pray before killing him. Despite Serpent's pleas for mercy and promises that he will never kill anyone again, Vanno remains resolute, pulling the trigger without hesitation. At the same time, Angelo recollects his conversation with Cordio. Recalling details from the letter received from his father's alleged friend, he reveals that the men who killed his family were Vincent Vanetti, Nero Vanetti, and Vanno Clement. Just as Vanno kills Serpent, Angelo discloses his true identity as Angelo Lagusa, the son of Testa Lagusa, the man whom Vanno and his comrades murdered. With this revelation, Angelo shoots Vanno, seeking vengeance for his family's deaths and exposing his true motives. Angelo then returns to Nero and informs him about Vanno's death. Nero punches him in a fit of rage, but Barbero tells Nero to calm down and listen to Angelo first. Angelo makes up a story about how Serpent killed Vanno when he untied his hands to let him pray. Nero asks Angelo to take him to the place where Vanno and Serpent died. Angelo takes Nero and Barbero to the graveyard, but to his surprise, only Vanno's body is there. Nero pushes his gun up against Angelo's back, who gives him the bombastic side eye, suspecting that he must be lying. Angelo returns to Cordio's apartment, who was patiently waiting for him. Cordio asks Angelo if he was successful in killing Fango, to which he replies that he messed up with Fango, letting him escape, but took out Vanno. Angelo also tells Cordio how Nero and Barbero suspect him of killing Vanno since his dead body was nowhere to be found at the site of the murder. When Cordio asks Angelo where Vanno's body is, he counters by asking if he is the one behind the disappearance. Cordio visits Serrato at his bar and confronts him about Vanno's murder. He denies any involvement in Vanno's death, expressing his distress. He lies to Serrato that Bruno was instructed by Nero to kill him, sending Serrato into a panic. Cordio then offers to assist Serrato with his situation, telling him that he might be able to help him if he tells him the truth. Elsewhere, Don Orco and his men sit down to eat some lasagna, but upon tasting it, Don Orco grimaces in disgust and spits it out, ordering his men that they should unalive the cook. Fango then shows up at the table, showing his ugly feet, and informs Don Orco about how someone tried to kill him last night, putting his suspicion on the Vanettis. He starts suggesting that the Orco family should start a war with them. But Don Orco tells Fango that the Galasha family wants the Orcos and Vanettis to get along, and that starting a war is out of the question. Fango is annoyed but asks Don Orco if he has seen Serpent, to which he replies that he hasn't. Back at the bar, Serrato confesses to Cordio that he was outside Fango's apartment with Bruno and Vanno, but he had no hand in Vanno's death. He also mentions how he saw Vanno exit the apartment with Serpent's body before driving to the graveyard, where Serrato followed him in a taxi. Upon reaching the graveyard, he heard some gunshots and saw both Serpent and Vanno dead on the ground, saying that they both took each other out. Serrato then tells Cordio how he got greedy before being held at gunpoint by Angelo, who was hiding in his bar. Serrato finally confesses that he took Serpent's dead body and sold it to Scusa, the new head of the Federal Bureau of Prohibition. Angelo demands Serrato to take him to where Serpent's body is. To prove his innocence, Bruno brings Nero and his men to the place where Serpent's body is. At Vincent's office, Scusa blackmails him by saying how a member of the Vanetti family abducted and killed a member of the Orco family, which is exactly the opposite of what the Galasha family wants. Scusa then tells Vincent that he has Serpent's body in custody and offers to sell it. Vincent demands to see the body in person first and asks Scusa to bring it to him before continuing negotiations. While in a car with Gatto, Fango asks him if Serpent is dead. Just as Fango asks this, he spots Tiger and Nero in a car passing by, and he immediately follows them. Bruno and Serrato arrive at the place where Serpent's body is kept but hears some footsteps, but it only turns out to be Nero. At the same time, Vincent, Frate, and Ronaldo discuss how the Galasha family will ask them to kill Nero for the murders in both families. Frate comes up with the clever idea of letting Nero escape to somewhere outside the city so they can spread the story that the Vanettis tried to kill Nero as demanded by the Galashas. But he was one step ahead and left the city before they could take him out. While waiting outside the building, Tiger encounters Fango and Gatto again, continuing this man's streak of terrible luck. Fango asks Tiger if he's with Nero, but he refuses to say anything. Just as Fango is about to burn Tiger's eyes with his cigarette, he hears some glass shatter and enters the building, keeping Tiger as a hostage. Fango, Gatto, and Tiger enter one of the rooms, where they find Nero standing beside a man with a sack covering his face, whom they believe is Serpent. Fango suggests to Nero that they should trade hostages, and all of them put down their guns one by one. Both hostages start walking, but Fango senses something a little off about Serpent's appearance. Fango pulls out a mini pistol from his pants and aims to shoot Serpent, but he kicks his gun into the air and tries to stab him with a knife, but Fango manages to defend against it. Serpent then takes off the sack on his face, revealing himself to be Bruno, who deserves an Oscar for his acting just now. Serrato hands Nero his gun and escapes with Tiger. While Bruno escapes through the window, Nero shoots Gatto in his arm before also making his escape. Later, as Nero is walking through Chinatown, he remembers how Bruno successfully proved his innocence by showing him Serpent's corpse, but he can still feel that something is off. Meanwhile, Fango and Gatto also discover Serpent's dead body in the building, which makes Fango happy, as it gives the Orco family an excuse to start war with the Vanettis. On their way back, Nero, Barbero, Bruno, and Cordio sees a car speeding up from behind them and slowing down once it overtakes them. Nero spots Frate in the car, and both parties stop on the side to discuss some important matters. Frate informs Nero about the lie that the Vanettis are going to tell for the sake of his escape. Obviously, Nero has no choice but to agree to the plan, and Bruno asks him if he can also join him since Fango already knows his face and staying in the city isn't safe for him. Nero lets Bruno come along on the condition that he will be driving the car, while Cordio just looks at Bruno as he smirks while lighting up his cigarette, realizing that this was his plan all along. Scuser returns to the building to fetch Serpent's body, but finds nothing there and curses Serrato since he is the only one beside him who knows this location. The Vanettis hold a funeral for Vanno the next day. Bruno and Nero also attends the funeral while hiding beside a tree from a very distance. Nero tells Bruno to go ahead, and the moment he leaves, Nero starts falling to his knees, crying for his brother. Later, they set off on their journey outside the city. At the same time, a man in a black suit dials a number and calls a muscular man with a beard and informs him about the two people that he wants him to kill. A week passes since Nero and Angelo begin traveling outside the city. Nero tells Angelo to drive faster, but Angelo refuses, saying that he might hit something again. Nero then complains about being hungry and tries to liven things up by stepping on the gas. The bearded man who was tasked with killing Nero and Angelo stands on the side of the road, wearing Mexican clothing, and tries to hitch a ride from them, but they drive right past him, spraying mud onto him and his dog. Angelo and Nero stop by Ginny's diner for some breakfast pancakes. Angelo inhales an entire ass pancake with extra maple syrup, while Nero asks the waitress if there are any places where they can stay for cheap. The waitress recommends an auto camp in the town of Coda, which is just ahead. The two of them leave the diner with Nero tipping the pretty waitress, wanting to get in her pants, and they make their way to the town. The Mexican mercenary, however, stops a man riding a horse cart in hopes of getting a free ride. At the campsite, Angelo and Nero spot two nuns helping some children with a piñata party. The kid successfully hits the piñata, making the children go apeshit crazy for the candy. Nero comes up with the idea to perform some tricks for the children and asks the nuns if he can perform them. He introduces himself under the alias Smart and starts juggling 3 of his balls, which immediately captures the children's attention. The children find Nero's performance amazing, but one of the children points at Bruno and asks if he also has any tricks for them. Nero tells everyone how Bruno is a good-for-nothing idiot who lacks social interaction, but Bruno suddenly comes up from behind him and hands Nero his wallet back, who didn't even notice that it was taken out of his own pocket. Bruno then secretly removes Nero's belt without him realizing, which causes him to trip and his pants to fall off, bringing an end to Bruno's magnificent performance as the children laugh and clap at the same time. Seeing the smile of the children, Bruno is happy as he smiles, feeling something funny inside his heart, and Nero sees this weird reaction of his. Later, they head back and set up their tent for the night. Elsewhere, the Mexican man holds out a photograph of Nero and Freight in their childhood days as he rides the horse cart of the man from before. As the sun sets, Nero shares some stories from his past with Bruno, whom he gradually starts trusting more and more. Bruno, being as manipulative as manages to ask Nero about his first job without making it obvious that he's trying to get information about his revenge. Nero reveals how when he was 14, he went to kill a man named Lagusa to do something. Nero also mentions how there were 4 men in total, including him, who went to the house. Angelo asks if he killed the man they were after, to which Nero replies that the man they were after made a move first, and they killed everyone in his house except a small child who ran away into the woods. He tried to shoot at the child but missed his shot. Later, Nero goes to bed, but Angelo opens the letter from his father's supposed friend and becomes suspicious of him since the letter only mentions 3 men. But Nero's story has 4 people in total. The next day, Angelo and Nero leave the auto camp and head to a town where they meet a sheriff named Nick. Nero asks him if there are any places he can get alcohol nearby as he slides some money into his hands. Nick points Nero to a hidden bar at the back of a drugstore. As they leave, Bruno pickpockets Nick and steals his wallet to do some shopping. On his way, Freight informs Nero how Orko has sent someone to kill him and that he should be wary of any big and muscular men. As he sits at the bar, Nero orders another drink but runs out of money and stares at a barrel, cooking something up in his mind. The Mexican man manages to reach the same town as his targets but gets stopped by Nick. Nick searches the Mexican man and takes all the cash out of his wallet. But as he checks his cart, he ends up finding the dead body of the horse cart's original owner in one of the barrels. The Mexican man grabs Nick and starts squeezing his milk out of him, asking if he has seen 2 men who are new in town and are traveling together. Nick is in agonizing pain but reveals to him that they're at the drugstore up ahead before getting his bones crushed by the Mexican man. As Bruno finishes buying his shopping, he sees a knife for sale in a nearby shop and purchases it. Back at the bar in the drugstore, Nero makes some money by winning a few arm wrestling matches. The Mexican man enters the bar and recognizes Nero, but Nero invites him for a round of arm wrestling. The Mexican man not only instantly wins, but he also starts beating the shit out of Nero. But just then, the Mexican man gets distracted from the painful cries of his dog and gets kicked in the nuts by Nero, who immediately escapes with Bruno. It turns out Bruno was the one who caused the distraction. As the Mexican man gets up, he tries to follow them with his dog, but gets hit with a car by Bruno, who is waiting to unalive him. But being the absolute brick shithouse he is, the Mexican man gets up again, and the car's engine goes up in smoke. Seeing this, Angelo and Nero run away on foot and come across an empty barn, which they decide to stay at for the night. But the Mexican man's dog sniffs out the location of his targets and leads him right to the barn. However, Nero has predicted this since he had a dog with him. They decide to ambush the Mexican man in the barn. The Mexican man makes his entry like he's Gotham's savior and starts attacking Bruno. Nero shoots the Mexican man, but his bullets have no effect, and as the Mexican man tries to kill him, Bruno throws the knife he bought but misses his target. He immediately dashes at Bruno, but Nero, who is out of ammo, picks up Bruno's knife and stabs the Mexican man with it, knocking him to the ground. As they leave the barn, Nero tells Bruno that he owes him for saving his life, but Bruno just ignores him. However, the owner of the barn shows up due to the noise and tells Bruno and Nero to stay still before shooting the Mexican man with a shotgun right in his face, killing him instantly. Nero gives the barn man with a shotgun right in his face, killing him instantly. Nero gives the barn owner his wallet that they stole from Nick as thanks and tells him to take in the Mexican man's dog before leaving in the horse cart as the morning arrives. Bruno drives the cart as Nero sits in the back and eats the canned pineapple. Sometimes later, Angelo and Nero are eating at a diner when Nero receives a call from Barbero, who informs him about the truce between the Vanetti and Orko families. He also shares details about Orko's failed attempt to eliminate Fango and how Fango has established his base at the church on the island, accompanied by 20 of his men. Barbero then asks Nero to meet up with him before returning to the city, and the 2 of them agree to meet up at the lodge. Nero takes a piss on some train tracks cause why not, before continuing their journey to the lodge, which is an undercover base for the Moonshine brewery. Bruno and Nero are greeted by Barbero, who mentions how the lodge has been raking in the big dollars with Cordio's moonshine, which is now called Lawless Heaven. Angelo is surprised to see Cordio at the lodge, and the 2 of them step aside to secretly talk about Angelo's revenge mission. saying that he will soon get close to Don Vanetti thanks to Nero since he has started to trust him. Just then, Nero calls Bruno to accompany him, saying that he will introduce him to Don Vanetti, and with a smirk, Bruno tells Cordio that it might actually not be long before he gets the chance to kill Don and Nero Vanetti. Barbero advises Nero not to take his eyes off Ronaldo when he arrives at the Vanetti mansion. Elsewhere, Freight pulls up to the mansion in a car, spots Tiger at the entrance, and asks him if Nero is inside. Tiger informs that Nero isn't here yet and asks him if they can really trust Orko. Freight replies that though it took a lot of effort, he managed to work out a truce with the Orko family before inviting him inside for a drink to celebrate Nero's return. Bruno and Nero head over to Ultimo Orko, Don Orko's restaurant, where they find him yelling at the chef for messing up the lasagna. Later that night, Bruno and Nero show up at the mansion and are greeted by Vol, one of Nero's subordinates. Nero notices how the security guards are different from usual and sees Tiger exit the mansion with his right arm raised, signaling something. Nero immediately understands and opens the car's door to let Tiger in. But as soon as Tiger makes a run for Nero's car, he gets shot in the shoulder. A bunch of men emerge from the mansion and start shooting Nero's car. Nero somehow escapes the mansion thanks to Voppel opening the gate, and he grabs onto the side of the car, joining Nero and the gang. Inside the car, Voppel confirms that Freight and Ronaldo are the ones who set this up, wanting to kill Nero. Inside Vincent's office, Freight reveals that one of the conditions for the truce with Orko was to kill Nero and that he's willing to sacrifice his brother for the safety of the family, saying that it was natural that his brother should die since he took that stupid decision earlier to take revenge. Just as the father and the son are arguing, Ronaldo steps in, telling Freight that it's not good to fight between families. At the same time, Nero and his gang stop by an abandoned warehouse to lay low. Barbero informs everyone that all routes for leaving the city are blocked, making escaping impossible. While everyone is sleeping, Cordio gets up and exits the warehouse, where he finds Bruno sitting all alone. Cordio tells Bruno how Nero will be killed no matter what since he got himself in too much trouble and tells him to scratch his revenge mission. He replies that he needs to get close to the Vanettis before he can reach Vincent, and that there's a fourth person involved in the murder of his family. Hearing this, Cordio starts telling him that his life is worth more than some revenge, but Bruno replies that he got it backwards, saying that if he abandons his revenge, he will lose the reason to live. The next day, Tiger's condition worsens. Knowing that they can't go to any hospital right now because it's all being monitored by their enemies, Bruno suggests working with Fango, who is currently at the church on the island for help with Tiger's treatment since there are doctors there. Nero hates the idea, grabbing Bruno's collar and telling him that there is no way he is working with the one who killed his brother. In the dead of night, Angelo takes all of the moonshine, loads it on the boat, and asks Cordio to come along with him to the church. Volpe and Nero see them leave but does nothing. Inside the church, Angelo gives Grancio a bottle of Lawless Heaven, saying that it's an apology for the fire and telling him that the rest of the booze is in the boat. He asks him if he can see Fango, but he just tells him to get lost. Lacrima is also at the church, and seeing him, she leads Bruno and Cordio to Fango's room. On their way, they meet Serrato, who is currently working without wages in the bar since he has no place to go after betraying Mr. Scusa. As they meet Fango, Lacrima leaves while touching Bruno's stick, telling him that she will see him later if he makes it out alive. This makes Fango extremely turned on. Bruno stands before Fango and asks him to help with hiding Nero and treating Tiger's wound. But Fango starts laughing and counters by inquiring what he has to gain in this deal. At the warehouse, Volpe starts arguing, saying that they are going to die since Bruno and Cordio betrayed them and they are probably selling them to Fango right now. But Cordio returns to the warehouse, saying that they didn't betray them, and relays Bruno's message they are to bring Tiger to the island, where Bruno will handle negotiations with Fango. Cordio assures everyone that Bruno didn't betray them by becoming Nero's hostage. Bruno proposes to Fango that he will help him bring down Don Orko since that's what Fango wants but can't accomplish with a mere 20 men. Fango becomes interested, but Bruno lies to him that overthrowing Don Orko was Nero's idea. By saying this, it allows him to ensure Nero's safety when he eventually shows up at the church, even though Nero has no plan to overthrow Orko. Nero and his men arrive at the church, where he tells Fango that he'll help him with killing Don Orko. Freight and Ronaldo join Don Orko for a drink at his restaurant, where he demands ownership of the lodge and its moonshine once Nero is dead. The next morning, Voppel announces that Tiger is going to live, and Bruno reveals how he has the perfect plan to kill Don Orko. but needs to be as discreet as possible with it before asking Vopel to get him a chicken. Bruno and Nero suit up and head over to Ottimo Orco to discuss matters with the man himself. Orco confronts Nero and comments on his confidence since he came to see him personally. Don Orco treats Bruno and Nero to some lasagna and whiskey as their last meal, while telling Nero how he ruined the good relationship between the Orco and Vanetti families. Don Orco pours Nero a glass of the finest whiskey he has, but Nero spills it on the table after taking a sip, pouring himself some Lawless heaven and downing the entire glass. Nero then pours a glass for Don Orco, who drinks it all and finds it scrumptious. Nero uses this as a bargaining chip against Don Orco and offers to hand over his entire brewery in exchange for a place to hide. Bruno and Nero head over to the lodge with Don Orco, who sends Corvo, his subordinate, with Nero inside the lodge to make sure that it's safe. As Nero goes inside with Corvo, Bruno stays behind with Don Orco, who asks him if he was the one who tried to kill Fango. Bruno replies in agreement, and Don Orco tells Bruno that he was hoping for Fango to die. Bruno asks Don Orco if he was the one who sent him the letter, but Don Orco doesn't seem to know anything about it. Bruno asks Don Orco to use him for accomplishing his goals, but he doesn't entertain the idea. Bruno then comes clean and reveals to Orco that his real name is Bruno Lagusa, not Avilio Bruno, and that his father, Testa Lagusa, was killed by Vincent Vanetti. Corvo calls Don Orco inside the lodge, confirming that it's safe. Bruno and Nero both have their hands tied, but Nero pours everyone a glass of Lawless heaven to celebrate their newfound partnership. Just as Nero pours Don Orco a glass, he hears something from where the barrels are kept. Corvo shoots the barrels one by one to make sure that they don't contain anything except moonshine. Lawless heaven starts leaking out from all the barrels except one, which Nero calls empty. From the empty barrel, Volpe jumps out and starts shooting Orco's men, killing all of them except two. Bruno takes the chance to find a gun and aim it towards Nero, telling him that he had been waiting for this opportunity for a long time before shooting him in the chest twice. Things settle down at the lodge, and Don Orco praises Bruno for avenging his father. Corvo tells Don Orco no anyway. Bruno pours Corvo, Don Orco, and himself some Lawless heaven, and the three of them raise their glasses to toast. All of them drink the moonshine, and Don Orco talks about how he can stand against the Galasha family once he starts selling Lawless heaven. Soon after drinking the moonshine, Corvo and Don Orco start to feel dizzy. Don Orco realizes that something is wrong and falls down on the ground. Just as he's about to black out, he sees Nero's face, smirking down on him. Don Orco wakes up and finds himself tied up with Fango, Bruno, and Nero standing in front of him. Don Orco curses Fango and asks him what he wants, to which Fango replies that he wants every single thing he has. As the sun sets, Bruno and Cordio further discuss the letter. Bruno mentions how, according to Nero, there were 4 men involved in the murder of his family, but the letter only mentions 3: Nero, Vincent, and Vanno. This leads him to think that the 4th person might be the one who sent him the letter to help him with his revenge. But before they can continue their conversation, Nero also shows up on the rooftop. Nero tells Bruno how the chicken really helped him play dead as he holds a packet of chicken blood in his hands. And there it is, guys, the chicken was the MVP all along. Fango dresses up as a chef and announces himself as the new Don of the family, changing the name from Orco family to Fango family. Orco's remaining executives sit at the dinner table, as if they're being held hostage, and Fango also announces how he's going to rename Ottimo Orco to Ottimo Fango. Fango asks Corvo the name of the dish that Orco wanted to perfect the most, and everyone knows it by now, but it's the Garfield special, lasagna. Lacrima and Serrato come over to the table and serve lasagna to all the executives, who hesitate to even taste it. Fango scares Corvo into being the one to first try the lasagna, and to everyone's surprise, he finds it delicious. All the other executives also begin eating the lasagna and praise its flavor. While eating, Corvo mentions how he wishes that Orco could also try this amazing lasagna, to which Fango replies that it's not possible, further adding by saying that the executives are eating what was left. One of the executives disappointedly says how it's too bad there isn't any more of the lasagna left. But Fango creepily says that he meant something else by his previous statement, and that there's plenty more lasagna left. One of the executives finds a human tooth in the lasagna, and all of them start throwing up once they realize that the lasagna was made from Orco's remains. Yummers. Nero, Tiger, Volpe, Barbero, Bruno, and Cordio eat lunch when Barbero mentions how things are only going to get even harder for them from here on. Bruno says how Fango's enemies have also become their enemies after he took over the Orco family. Nero asks Bruno to elaborate on his statement, but he tells Nero to pay it no mind and continue eating. While in her bedroom, Fio requests Ronaldo to bring Nero back to the Vanetti family, to which he replies that if Nero agrees to swear loyalty to the Galascia family, he'll let him live, and that Frate is in line to become the next Don of the Vanettis. At his restaurant, Fango treats Bruno and Nero to some pizza as a way to thank them for helping him take over the Orco family. Fango then says how he's going to crush the Vanetti family next and wants Nero's help with it. Nero agrees to help, but Fango mentions how he's also interested in getting his hands on Lawless Heaven as his two guests leave. In the car, Bruno and Nero discuss how Fango wants Lawless Heaven all to himself and that he'll kill them once they're no longer useful. Ronaldo enters Frate's room and finds him in a pathetic state. He talks Frate into thinking that killing his own brother will be the only way out of the messy situation they found themselves in and slides him a pack of the Good Stuff trademark before leaving. Nero goes to a bar to sell Lawless Heaven and runs into Uncle Gonzo, who tells him to bring an end to his feud with Frate and return to the family. Gonzo also mentions how many people in the family miss Nero, but he presses X to doubt his statement. Back at Vincent's office, Ronaldo and Frate talk about how Nero has been causing way too much trouble and that Don Galascia wants Frate to be the next Don of the Vanettis. The pressure drives Frate crazy, and he says that it's kill or be killed now, but Gonzo expresses that he's strictly against the two brothers fighting each other. It's nighttime when Bruno and Nero are walking down the street when a car comes up and stops in front of them with Fio stepping out of it. Nero and Frate sit at a table as Fio comes with some onion soup and joins them. She gets straight to the point and expresses her desire for the family to go back to the way it used to be. Nero and Frate stick to their own beliefs and refuse to budge an inch. Nero says how he wants to prioritize the Vanettis' pride, but Frate shows that he's okay with the Galascias making the Vanettis their puppets for the sake of their safety. Things get heated and Frate yells that everything will go back to normal if Nero dies, which angers Fio, who slaps Frate and asks Nero to talk things out with Ronaldo. Fio bursts into tears and Nero takes his leave. Nero tells Bruno that he'll try to work things out with Ronaldo, but Bruno says that it's not feasible and mentions how he had a little brother like Frate, which he'll let Nero meet real soon. In Nero's absence, Bruno approaches Volpe and requests his assistance with a matter concerning Nero. Volpe responds affirmatively, stating his willingness to do anything for Nero. The next day, Ronaldo and Frate leave the Vanetti mansion for Sunday church. In the car, Ronaldo tells Frate how Nero is planning to meet him next week to discuss things and assures Frate that it'll lead to him being the new Don of the Vanetti family. Just as Frate and Ronaldo's car is driving, Volpe speeds up in a blue car from behind and shoots Ronaldo in his arm before driving off, but guards manage to shoot Volpe as well. Bruno is also in the car with Volpe and tells him to stop the car so they can treat his bleeding. Volpe stops the car in the woods and Bruno shoots him in the chest before crashing the car into a tree, making it seem like Volpe died in a car crash. Frate spots Volpe's body in the crashed car and becomes dead set on killing Nero. The Vanettis hang Volpe's corpse off the side of a bridge for Nero to see, and the news about the worsening feud between the brothers spreads like wildfire thanks to the media. Frate gets even more stressed about the situation and suggests Ronaldo leave the city, but Ronaldo yells at him, telling him to man up before throwing him some packs of cocaine. While Fio is brushing her hair, Ronaldo enters the room and tells her that he'll hear Nero out. Ronaldo puts pressure on her by telling her that their child will be the one to bring an end to this feud and asks her to call Nero to inform him that she's pregnant with Ronaldo's child. Fio calls Nero to come see her. As Fio and Ronaldo await Nero, they hear and informs the two of them that Nero will be a bit late. Bruno hands over Fio a bouquet of flowers with a small note folded on it. Fio reads the note while Bruno and Ronaldo discuss Nero's arrival. Bruno quickly takes his leave and Ronaldo opens his drawer to hide a gun in his pants. Fio asks Ronaldo if he'll kill Nero, which he confirms in a roundabout way. Just as he pats Fio's head, she shoots him in the torso twice with a revolver. Bruno and Nero enter Frate's room, and the two brothers are prepared to settle things for once and for all. Nero suggests that Frate should leave the city to freshen up, but Frate starts crying and talks about how he was always overshadowed by Nero ever since their childhood. Bruno notices something and lifts up the book from Frate's desk, which reveals a fully loaded revolver under it. Bruno gives the gun back to Frate and tells the two brothers to settle things before leaving the room. Frate and Nero both aim at each other and pull the trigger, but only Nero's gun fires a shot since Bruno had secretly unloaded Frate's gun when he picked it up. At a train station, Tiger and Bruno see Fio off. Bruno closes up to Fio and whispers into her ear that Freight killed Ronaldo, which prompted Nero to kill his own brother as a demonstration of his loyalty to the Galatians. Bruno walks up to a depressed Nero and pats his shoulder before telling him that he'll be his brother from now on. Scusa exits a building with a man named Delphi, the Federal Bureau of Prohibition from Chicago, who will be peacekeeping in Lawless instead of him. Delphi tells the media that his main targets are the Fango and Vanetti families. He also mentions how he'll be going after Nero, the current acting Don of the Vanetti family, and his Lawless Heaven brewery. Nero hears Delphi's announcement on the radio, and Barbero suggests he slow down the manufacturing of Lawless Heaven, but Nero refuses. As Fango plans to crush the Vanettis, Bruno and Cordio head inside a cafe and sit beside Delphi, throwing him a stack of cash to bribe him. Delphi refuses the bribe, so Bruno hits him with a threat saying that his daughter is 4 years old right now and he should take of his family. This scares him and shocks Cordio. The two of them leave the cafe, but Delphi, whose family's safety just got threatened, gives back the bribe money to Cordio, who slides it inside Bruno's pocket. Cordio worries that Bruno has become the very thing he swore to destroy. Barbero informs Nero that Delphi has started shutting down breweries around the town, but Nero tells him to shoot a few bullets into Delphi's house to scare him and kill him altogether if the first measure doesn't work. Meanwhile, Serrato tries hard to make Cordio join Fango and make Lawless Heaven for him, since he heard a rumor that the Prohibition era is soon coming to an end, but Cordio refuses. As tensions escalate with Delphi investigating the lodge, Nero decides to issue orders for Delphi's elimination. However, Bruno proposes a more strategic approach, suggesting targeting Delphi's family instead to force him to call off his investigation. Inside his own apartment, Cordio yells, questioning Bruno's decision to involve Delphi's family when his vendetta is solely against the Vanettis. In response, Bruno tosses a stack of money to Cordio, telling him it's for his college expenses. Bruno then tells Cordio to stay out of his life before leaving his apartment. Delphi gets a call from an unknown person, telling him to call off the investigation, but he angrily refuses. Delphi's wife and daughter leave the house to go somewhere, and Delphi tells the driver to take care of them. Delphi gets another call on the phone and picks it up. As soon as the driver turns the ignition, the car explodes. Delphi rushes out and stares at the burning car, but luckily his wife and daughter remain unharmed since they didn't enter the car. Safe to say that my man ain't investigating it after that. Fango gets a call from someone who gives him some very interesting information. Bruno, Nero, and Barbero go to the Vanetti playhouse to decide on what color of carpets to use for it. As the three of them exit the playhouse, they encounter an unfamiliar man rushing toward them, calling himself Nero's fan. While Barbero attempts to dismiss the man, Bruno observes two men loading ammo into their guns and alerts Nero and Barbero. Suddenly, the two men open fire, but thanks to Bruno's warning, Nero and Barbero evade the bullets. While the fan ends up riddled with holes, Bruno returns fire at the attackers, but they manage to escape in a car. Back at the office, everyone realizes that someone leaked the information to Fango, who wants to kill Nero. Orders are given out by Nero to find the Susie imposter. Late at night, Cordio sits in a car with Fango and Serrato. Turns out Cordio was the one who leaked the information to Fango and is now scared of the consequences. Fango reassures Cordio and talks about how he'll finish the Vanettis and use Cordio's moonshine to make loads of money. While Cordio is working at the lodge, Barbero comes to inform him that Nero and his men won't be able to visit the lodge for a while. Barbero also mentions how everyone is a suspect for being the traitor, including him. Cordio assures Barbero that he'll take care of the lodge and goes off to work. Cordio looks behind to see Barbero staring at him like he knows something. As Cordio is walking home, he spots Gatto staring at him from inside his car. The next day, Bruno starts noticing how Cordio has been acting a bit weird. At the church, Lacrima informs Fango that an unusual guest has come to meet him. Scusa shows up with the Lawless Heavens recipe with him and tries selling it to Fango, who plans to dispose of Cordio since he's of no use to him. Serrato drives Cordio to Fango, who wants to discuss something with him. Fango pours Cordio a drink and tells him straight up that he's of no use to him anymore. Cordio takes a sip of the drink and realizes that it's Lawless Heaven before Fango reveals to him that the recipe was leaked to him by Scusa. Fango grabs a golf club and menacingly approaches Cordio, who stumbles over Scusa's lifeless body with its skull battered in by Fango. After scaring Cordio, Fango decides to spare him but threatens to inform Nero of Cordio's betrayal. Dialing the Vanetti mansion's phone, Fango requests to speak with Nero. Cordio begins to breathe heavily as he reaches for the bottle of moonshine. While Fango's guard is down, Cordio smashes the bottle over Fango's head and then thrusts it into his throat. He then grabs the telephone and keeps smashing it on Fango's head until his brains spill out. Cordio hurries towards the train station after murdering Fango, hoping to make his escape, but he is intercepted by some men. Meanwhile, Bruno wakes up in his apartment, hesitating to answer a phone call that has come in. Bruno is led into a garage where he finds Cordio tied to a chair, being beaten up and interrogated. Gatto is the one who caught Cordio and brought him to the Vanettis. Carmelo, one of Orco's men, beats up Cordio to get answers, but Ganzo tells him to step aside and does the questioning himself, but it also bears no fruit. In the office, Nero plans to kill Cordio and Barbero informs Nero that the higher-ups from the Fango family wish to work with the Vanettis since their Don is dead. Barbero asks Bruno to leave the room to discuss something with Nero in private. Bruno heads back to his apartment and displays his frustration about the situation when Serrato shows up at his door. Bruno asks Serrato about what happened between Fango and Cordio. After Serrato finishes explaining everything, Bruno remembers how Cordio told him that he was the one who got him into this mess. Bruno leaves in a hurry and sneaks into the courtyard where the garage is. Bruno hears gunshots from inside the garage and Ganzo comes out from the garage with a gunshot wound in his arm. Ganzo explains how Carmelo tried to kill him, and he turned the tables on him, but the commotion allowed Cordio to escape. Shortly after, Nero dispatches a search party to find Cordio. In the office, Barbero shares his suspicions about Bruno with Nero. However, Nero dismisses Barbero's concerns, displaying his absolute trust in Bruno. Bruno heads back to his apartment and receives a call from someone who turns out to be Cordio. On the call, Cordio says that he's going to be killed if Bruno doesn't kill Nero. Turns out Cordio is reading a script while being held at gunpoint. Cordio tells Bruno that he'll call him again around the same time, and if Nero's not dead, he'll be killed. Just before Cordio can reveal who sent Bruno that letter, the line cuts off. Bruno starts wondering who the fourth person could possibly be. Del Toro, Vincent's bodyguard, calls Bruno, Nero, Barbero, and Ganzo to the office. Nero tells Vincent how he wants Barbero to be an executive of the family and introduces Bruno to him. Vincent asks Bruno to take care of Nero before starting his "You were right, I was wrong, blah blah blah" ass speech, which ultimately ends with him appointing Nero as the new Don of the Vanetti family. They then commence the gayest ceremony ever, and every man in the room goes up to Nero and kisses him on his hand like the Pookie Bear he is. After Nero becomes the new Don, Barbero gets everyone up to speed with how the family will handle things going forward. He talks about how the Fango family has been incorporated with the Vanetti family. He also shares his plan to use the island and their primary sales route with plans to expand the lodge and sell Lawless Heaven in Chicago. Ganzo protests that Don Galasha will not be happy, but Nero tells him that he'll send Bruno over to Don Galasha to negotiate things. Barbero requests to go instead of Bruno, but Nero refuses. Tiger and Nero get drunk at the dinner, while Bruno asks him about the man who was standing beside Vincent. Nero explains who Del Toro is to Bruno and shares how he has been serving Vincent ever since he came back from the European War. Tiger mentions how Del Toro went to prison 7 years ago and just got out about 2 years ago. Bruno asks Nero if his first ever job was with Del Toro, to which he replies that Del Toro went to prison before that. Tiger leaves to take a piss, and after some silence, Nero tells Bruno how Ganzo admires him. As Bruno gets up to leave the room, Nero tells him how 7 years ago, on his first job, he wasn't able to shoot anyone. Bruno asks Nero if he could shoot the kid from 7 years ago now and leaves. Bruno visits Serrato's bar and hands him something before proceeding to a house, where he knocks on the door while holding a gun. Ganzo answers the door, and Bruno asks him about the letter. Ganzo confirms that he was the one who sent it, addressing Bruno by his real name instead of his alias Avilio Bruno. As Bruno boards the boat to Chicago, he spots Tiger, who is looking at him suspiciously. The two of them talk about his trip and Cordio before Bruno gets on the boat and leaves. After the boat goes some distance, Cordio shows up behind Bruno, who compliments his hat. In the office, Tiger reports to Nero that Cordio was nowhere to be found at the port and that Bruno left for Chicago alone. Nero tells Barbero not to suspect Bruno, but he doesn't stop. Ganzo, who is also in the office, thinks about when Bruno came to his house. After Bruno had entered his house, he asked Ganzo why he sent him the letter with the murderer's name, to which he told him that he wants all the good alcohol, women, and the entirety of Lawless to himself, and that Vincent thinks that Testa's son, who got away, is dead. Bruno tells Ganzo that he can kill Nero at any time, but he requires Ganzo's assistance in targeting Vincent. Bruno says that Ganzo also needs his support to achieve his own objective. He asks Ganzo to release Cordio, promising to return after ensuring his safety. When Ganzo asks about the consequences of refusing Bruno's request, Bruno reveals that he has given the letter Ganzo wrote to someone. If anything happens to Bruno, the letter will be sent to Nero, exposing its original sender. Gonzo then releases Cordio and Bruno takes him to his old apartment. Cordio spends one night at Bruno's man cave before realizing that there's no way a human can live like that and goes shopping with Bruno. He also asks Bruno to take him to some of his favorite places. After the little slice of life montage, they head to bed, and the next day Bruno gets off the phone with someone, sending his regards to Strega. Bruno then leaves Cordio and makes a quick stop in Chicago before returning to Lawless. The construction of the playhouse goes well, and Barbero mentions how Bruno has been away for an entire week when reaching Chicago normally takes one day, but Tiger and Gonzo take Bruno's side. Just as they're talking, Bruno shows up and reports on his visit to Chicago. He informs Nero that the negotiations with Don Galasha and his underboss nephew, Strega, went great. Before arriving at the mansion, Bruno fulfills his promise to visit Gonzo. During their meeting, Gonzo informs Bruno that the playhouse will open within 3 days, and both Vincent and Don Galashas will be attending. Gonzo then hands Bruno a gun and some ammo to kill Vincent with. The playhouse's grand opening is only 2 days away, and Barbero heads to the port, shows some man a picture of Cordio, and asks him if he recognizes it. Later that night, Bruno gets called into the mansion after being informed that some new information about Cordio has surfaced. Bruno enters the room and Barbero asks him if he was the one who let Cordio escape as he points a gun at him. Just as Barbero questions Bruno, a man opens the door and pushes Cordio inside, which shocks Bruno, causing him to show real human emotion for the first time in 7 years. When Bruno left Cordio back at his old apartment, he wanted to stop Bruno's and his own involvement in the Mafia, wanting to go back to the good old days. One day, Bruno's landlady comes up and informs Cordio that he has a call from someone named Angelo Lagusa. When Cordio picks up the phone, Gonzo tells him that he needs to come back to Lawless at once to save Bruno. At the mansion, Barbero beats Cordio up and asks why he wanted to kill Nero, to which he replies that he did all that to save Bruno from this ridiculous place which they call the Vanetti Mansion. Cordio tells everyone that Bruno had no involvement in his plans and that he was acting alone. Nero cocks his gun and aims it at Cordio before handing it to Bruno and asking him to kill Cordio to prove his loyalty to the family. Cordio recalls all the crazy things he has done with Bruno ever since he proposed the idea to sell his moonshine to the Mafia. Bruno, knowing that he has no way out of this situation, aims the gun at Cordio and makes a painful expression before pulling the trigger and killing him. Standing before Cordio's lifeless body, Bruno tells him that he'll soon join him as well. Barbero and Nero ask about the specifics of Bruno's meeting with Don Galasha and Strega. However, Bruno, exhausted and sleep-deprived, responds with brief, one-word answers. Shortly afterwards, Don Galasha and Strega arrive at the Vanetti mansion and exchange greetings with Nero and Vincent. Nero serves them lawless heaven, but Vincent coughs up blood, hiding it with a napkin. As Don Galasha and Strega depart, they invite Bruno to join them in Chicago, but he declines. In a bar, Bruno and Gonzo discuss their plan to eliminate the 2 Vanettis at the playhouse the following day. Gonzo brings 2 of his men to assist in killing Del Toro, who will be guarding the room where Nero, Vincent, and Don Galasha will be watching the play. Bruno asks Gonzo to write his name among the list of murderers in the letter, to show that Gonzo isn't involved with him. He also reveals to Gonzo that he was aware of Gonzo being in the car on the night of Testa's murder, also mentioning how Gonzo didn't fire a single shot that night. Bruno suddenly leaves as Strega enters the bar, asking Gonzo about his trust in Bruno. Gonzo calls Bruno a capable man and asks Strega if Don Galasha knows about their plan, to which he replies that he's unaware. Barbero goes to Nero, requesting him to remove Bruno from the list of guards at the playhouse, but Nero refuses. Nero goes to Vincent, whose health continues to decline. Vincent reveals to Nero that Testa Lagusa was his best friend whom he killed, wondering if there was another way to save him from the Galashas. Bruno's schizophrenia kicks in when he pours 2 glasses of lawless heaven and starts talking to Cordio's hallucination about his revenge story finally coming to an end. It's the playhouse's grand opening. Nero, Vincent, Don Galasha, and everyone else make their appearance at the playhouse. Members of the Galasha family arm themselves with machine guns and spread through every corner of the playhouse to ensure their Don's safety. Bruno tells Barbero that he's going to take a look around the playhouse and walks upstairs. Gonzo's men set their eyes on Del Toro and attack him when no one's around. Despite getting stabbed thrice, Del Toro manages to kill both of the attackers and heads towards the VIP room where Vincent, Nero, and Don Galasha are. Del Toro almost reaches the room, but Bruno comes running from behind and stabs him, delivering the final blow. Barbero and Tiger catch Bruno killing Del Toro and tie him to a chair in the basement. Bruno tells Barbero that the rest of his comrades are after Nero and tells him to read the letter in his pocket. Barbero reads the letter and Tiger goes to call Ganzo and Nero, but Barbero tells him to call Ganzo only. Tiger tells Ganzo about Bruno's betrayal, and on the way Ganzo asks Tiger to call Nero as well since he's the Don. Barbero tells Ganzo that Nero won't kill Bruno and takes his gun out. Before Barbero can shoot Bruno, Ganzo takes out Barbero. Ganzo tells Bruno that their plan is over, but Bruno says that things are going perfectly. Tiger brings Nero to the basement and Ganzo tells Nero how he just missed Bruno who escaped. Ganzo hands over the letter to Nero when Strega shows up and tells the Vanettis to face the consequences if anything happens to Don Galatia. Nero and Tiger look for Bruno, who makes his way to the booth where Vincent and Don Galatia are. Bruno asks both men inside the room to come with him, but Vincent refuses and gets aggressive. Don Galatia tells Vincent to take it easy and allows Bruno to come inside. Bruno enters the room with a gun pointed at Vincent and tells him that he's Testa Lagusa's son and has come to Lawless to take everything back from him. Vincent closes his eyes and Bruno pulls the trigger and shoots Don Galatia instead. Strega sees this and shoots Ganzo for betraying him before ordering his men to kill every Vanetti they see. The crowd begins panicking, and the Vanettis start going down like flies while Nero is trying to find Bruno. Nero spots Bruno disappearing into the crowd when he sees Vincent on the ground, coughing up lots of blood. Nero rushes over to his father, who tells him that it's all over and that everything they did was for nothing, before passing away. Nero hugs his father's lifeless body as rage flows through every fiber of his being. Bruno hides in a dark valley and passes out, but Strega finds him. Nero, frustrated, wonders why he trusted Bruno, who is tied up on a chair by Strega's men. In the distance, Bruno sees the island go up in flames as the sound of gunshots and explosions fills the sky. Someone knocks on the door and kills both of Strega's men. Bruno turns around and finds Nero standing behind him. The Galashas surround the Vanettis, who are holed up on the island, and a one-sided shootout begins, with the Vanettis getting outnumbered. While in the church with Tiger, Nero receives a call from Serrato, who was outside the building where Strega's men took Bruno, and informs Nero that Bruno is tied up in room #501 at Hotel Lawless. Nero takes Bruno from the hotel, and both of them get inside Serrato's car. Serrato gets emotional over Cortio's death and blames Bruno for getting him into all the mess. Nero asks Bruno who the sender of the letter is and reveals that it is Ganzo, which leaves Nero feeling betrayed and disappointed. Nero asks Bruno why didn't he kill him at the playhouse, to which Bruno replies that he wanted Nero to feel the same pain that he did, a pain worse than death. After holding this line in for 7 years, Bruno finally gets a chance to tell Nero that it was a shame that Vincent died too soon, which causes Nero to lose his shit. Serrato tells them to stop and starts driving. At the island, Tiger and his men plan to escape Lawless by boat, but they get spotted by the Galashas, who shoot down every single one of them before they even get to the boat. The next day, Serrato stops by a gas station and leaves the car to get some breakfast from the grocery store. Nero takes the opportunity to leave Serrato behind and drive away in his car. In Bruno's dream, he sees waves rolling onto a coastline and wakes up shortly after to find himself in a bed with his stab wound tended to. Strega shows up and asks Bruno why he killed Don Galatia, to which he responds that it was convenient since the Vanettis killed his family. Bruno asks Strega why he saved him, to which he replies that he wanted to thank Bruno since he became the new Don after Don Galatia's death. Strega tells Bruno that the Vanettis fled to the island after he passed out and tells him to earn his freedom by killing a certain someone on the island, but Bruno tells Strega that he doesn't care about it anymore. In the present, Nero stops by a diner to get something to eat while Bruno sits opposite to him with his hands tied. Nero finishes his meal and passes Bruno a pack of cigarettes as he smokes one himself. Nero stops the car and looks at the map for directions, but Bruno tells him to take the right, which leads to the ocean. Bruno asks Nero if he has ever been to the ocean, to which he replies that he hasn't before following Bruno's directions. The two of them camp in the woods and Nero passes Bruno some booze before asking him why didn't he leave the city. Bruno tells him that he wanted to see how his revenge plays out. Nero then asks him if he is satisfied, but Bruno says that he thought he'd find a reason to live once he took revenge on his family's killers, but it was all for nothing. Bruno's answer angers Nero, who pushes him against a tree and punches him while asking why Bruno didn't kill him. Bruno starts crying and yells at Nero, telling him that he should have killed him on that night 7 years ago. Nero remembers how he saw Testa's son run out of the house and how he hesitated to shoot him as he ran into the woods. The next morning, while Nero is eating a steak, Bruno asks him to untie his hands before putting some of Nero's food in his mouth. Nero even allows Bruno to drive the car, and the two of them make a stop when their car breaks down. After a long journey, the two of them finally arrive at a cloudy beach. Nero tells Bruno that one doesn't need a reason to live, one just lives. Bruno walks ahead of Nero and tells him that the reason he didn't kill him is because he didn't want to kill him. Nero stops, but Bruno keeps walking. Nero takes out his revolver, aims it at Bruno's back and shoots. Nero drives back with a can of pineapple in the passenger seat and smiles. The ocean's waves wash up their footsteps in the sand, leaving no traces of them behind.